Secretary Chris Wright predicts oil will flow freely once the war with Iran is over, speaking at the Three Seas Summit in Croatia today. Wright remained confident that Saudi Arabia and the UAE will produce as much oil as they can to offset the supply chain blockade. This comes after the head of the International Energy Agency recently predicted Europe is just weeks away from running out of oil, which could halt their transportation industry. However, Wright says European nations can help lead the energy revival once the conflict comes to a close.
But with energy and with our economy, we're looking for where is the dynamism, where is the next growth, the next step forward is going to be. They are moving quickly. They're pro-energy, pro-common sense, faster growing, and we hope they will set the tone and turn the trajectory of Europe as a whole.
Well, the UAE is already taking up Wright's suggestion to start boosting oil production following their decision to leave OPEC. Speaking of that, the UAE's energy minister dealt OPEC a heavy blow Tuesday, saying it's quitting the oil cartel by May 1st. Officials say the decision followed a review of the UAE's current and future production capacity, adding it's also based on national interest. Now, the Middle Eastern country is one of OPEC's largest producers, together controlling nearly half of the world's oil before the Iran conflict. The announcement comes as OPEC producers have been struggling to get ships through the Strait of Hormuz. For more on this, we're bringing in Daniel Turner, the founder and executive director of Power the Future. Daniel, thanks for being here today.
Great to be with you.
So why now? What pushed the UAE to this point?
I think there's, in the world writ large, I think there is a growing push towards dissolving a lot of these large globalist organizations. And so obviously the UAE leaving NATO, leaving OPEC is a big deal. But look at the conflict we're having with NATO, right? Look at America's interests versus NATO's interests, and they don't seem to be aligned. Look at countries like Poland and Hungary and their interests with the European Union, and they don't seem to be aligned. And I think what we're seeing is a lot of countries say, we're part of this conglomerate, but the conglomerate no longer serves our needs. UAE, for example, they produce around 3 million barrels of oil a day. They could produce 5, but OPEC doesn't let them produce 5. And then at a certain point, the UAE has to say, why are we beholden to OPEC, right? Which is based, by the way, in Vienna. Always wonder why it's based in Vienna, but it's been there since it was founded in 1970. Why do a bunch of guys in Vienna get to decide that we can't produce more oil and gas when we have the capacity, the ability, we want the revenue, we want the jobs? And so I think there's a lot to do with energy. There's a lot to do with energy markets and oil and gas futures. But really, I think there is a movement in the world, I think America inspired it, of looking at these alliances and saying, are they serving our national interests? And if not, why are we still part of them?
Well, so then how may the UAE's exit impact global oil supply and prices?
It could have a huge impact because 2.5 million barrels more a day in the global supply without a huge increase in demand will bring down prices. And that's the reason why OPEC doesn't want more supply, is they want to keep prices artificially high. And that makes a lot of sense from OPEC's perspective. Remember, these countries are 95% of their GDP is oil and gas. So they need that revenue and they need those prices to remain high. So if the UAE is able to produce more and prices lower, on volume, they'll do better as a nation. But OPEC as a whole probably won't do as well. So, yeah, it will have a huge impact on the worldwide supply and worldwide prices. And that's a good thing. And more than anything else, it weakens OPEC as a whole. And that's a really good thing for America. OPEC was only created to fight America. It was never created to be a friend or an ally or an organization. It was created to go toe to toe against the United States. So a weak OPEC is good for America.
Yeah, it's a blow to OPEC's power, that's for sure. Now, it sounds like a big win for the U.S. economy. Could it backfire? Is there a possibility of that?
I don't see how, because even the UAE, they don't even need the Straits of Hormuz at this point, right? They have pipelines going to the southern part of the peninsula, and they have ports there, and that's what they've been doing in the last couple of weeks. Just the way the Saudi Arabia has a pipeline going over to the Red Sea and bypassing the Straits of Hormuz as well. So geographically, they're saying, we have abilities to forego threats from Iran, to forego just OPEC's needs as a whole. I mean, I guess it could have repercussions that are unforeseen. There's always that black swan scenario. But if you're from the UAE and you have your country's interest at heart, this is a good move. And, President Trump, he always says America first, right? But he says every country should have the same policy. This doesn't really have a huge impact on America per se. But I like to see countries fighting for their own autonomy and not just contributing to some global nebulous blob.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Daniel Turner, founder and executive director of Power the Future. Thank you for being here today. Appreciate your insight.
Pleasure. Thank you.
You got it. Florida's proposed new congressional maps move a step closer to being signed into law. The state Senate followed the House's